was ridiculous, and so I don't do that
Yeah.
anymore.
I just kind of quit vaping and have basically just been holding on with a couple cigarettes every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do it once in a while. I don't mind that, but like, yeah, not every day. Like it changed like the way I used to, man. It's
Good
ridiculous.
for you. Good for you. Yeah, yeah. Good moderate usage. I think that's usually the best way to go.
Yeah, but like George Carlin, he always said like he always kept a joint around the house whenever he needed it. So I'm kind of like that.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have some weed here and there if I ever want to smoke. But yeah,
That's
it's not.
smart.
Yeah, it's not an everyday thing. Because like I was ridiculous with it, man. I had to have like an eighth with me at all given times, and it was stupid, man. Because like when I would run out, I would be like a little kid throwing a tantrum, like telling my wife like, hey, I need to go out, and I wouldn't come back until I scored, man. I'm like,
We got to do what you got to do at the time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then yeah, dude, because I also have four kids, man, so they would drive me nuts. And but I mean, they're all
Seriously.
and yeah, they're all they're getting older, so like it's not as hectic.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But man,
Man.
I mean, you were here up here with Kurt, and
Yeah,
like I don't know. I mean, I don't really. We don't have to go into that stuff from earlier, but
we can go into it if you want. Yeah, I'm down.
I was just wondering because like I heard you agree a lot with what he said because I of course I disagree with Kurt. I think because he didn't. If you notice, like the whole time I was asking him like, can you produce a paper that establishes what you say, and he never bothers doing that. And
Oh, I
because
think there's tons. I think there's tons of papers you can come up with. Like 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 I think the core problem is like, I brought up Phineas Gage.
yeah,
Like, how do you explain Phineas Gage without assuming that when you cause changes to the physical brain, you cause changes to consciousness because consciousness is an emergent property of the brain? How
well,
do you get to anything else?
yeah, okay, because like, man, well, okay, I have one issue I have with like Kurt is like he'll cut you off in the middle of like your sentence, so and, he won't let you finish. But since you're allowing me to finish, I was trying to like bring up that factory model, and they were like, no, that doesn't, that doesn't parallel to consciousness. And it wasn't supposed to. It's just that the whole point is production dependence. Like as long as the factory is producing cars, then consciousness is there. That's the emergent model. When the factory stops producing cars, then consciousness blinks out. That's
Right.
yeah. And so I was trying to make that very simple point, but he wouldn't let me finish. He's like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that analogy. And I was like, well, it's not really meant to be elaborate and talk about the subjective quality of experience or anything
Well,
like that.
I mean, even then, say, I like that analogy. I think it works fine.
Yeah, I think it's very simple. It gets straight to the point. And so,
So,
and then
what then?
the other model would have been, with idealism or the mind at large, the radio model, the transceiver model. So Phineas Gage in the transceiver model, if you damage the radio, it will affect how the signal is interpreted. So you have identical results in both models. So that's what I was trying to tell Kurt. Like
Sure, but what, like, if there is like something emitting the frequency, if it takes a receiver to interpret and receive the signal, isn't
yeah,
that still producing what we call consciousness?
yeah, I mean, he was, I think taking it like too literally. Like I think in of course, like I was
But
trying to
that's
say,
what I would say.
well, the way I often think about, I think the way a lot of people who hold that view think about it is like the consciousness is something non-local, meaning ubiquitous, or it's a field that's everywhere. And in that view, at least, it is more like Wi-Fi would be the better analogy there.
How do you detect it somewhere other than the brain, for
And see,
example?
that's what Kurt was having issues, and he thought it was unfalsifiable. Because like the brain would be the only instrument to detect it. Like there would be really no other way. And I was trying to explain that, well, there's an asymmetry there. Like you're
That's
calling this view
So how do you test whether it could be falsified if the brain is the only thing that can produce it, therefore making it indistinguishable
Yeah.
from the
Well, that's
same proposition?
that's why I would bring up, because I think mystical experiences exploring that phenomenon could bring about something like that. And but
Sure.
even in Kurt's view, I think there's an asymmetry there, that because he tried to say that like his own view wasn't unfalsifiable, but I don't think you can view a brain where that's not non-emergence. You can't view non-emergence. You can't even view emergence. It's just it's induction. You know what I mean? It's deduced from it's
You
an
can
inference.
view emergence.
You said you can view emergence.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I see. I would disagree with that. I think it's emergence is an inference. That's a hypothesis. I think that's why it remains like that in a lot of these studies. Like, okay, if you want, you can go to any study you want that you.
Okay, and Benjamin Horwitz said these are just so stories, no evidence. Thank you so much for the super chat. Greatly appreciated.
You can go to
Wrong.
any. Oh yeah, go ahead, man. If you were going to say something. No, I was just merely going to say that if you go to any study that is trying to support emergence or the global workspace theory, what have you, they will explain within the abstract, within the conclusions that they're holding to a hypothesis. They will make it very clear, that this is a hypothesis, this is how we think it works, but we're not saying this is the case. And yes, you will find dozens and dozens and dozens of these type of studies.
Yeah, they're not saying that 100% this is the case, but like with the best evidence, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
usually the case,
Sure,
right?
it is. I will admit there that there is a consensus view of out of a lot of these professionals are materialists. They are people who hold that favor that perspective, and so of course they're going to champion it. They're going to put forth that hypothesis.
Well, why do they even have that opinion in the first place?
Yeah, well, I see. I think it does arrive out of
The majority of society is theistic.
Yeah. Well, while that may be true, some people will argue that a majority of like scientists aren't, and
Which is interesting because
yeah,
at least within certain fields, a majority aren't, right?
sure. Yeah, and then what I really like, I think is Bishop Barron. He points out, yeah, while that may be true, because some people will even point out a majority of philosophers aren't theists, but he says, yeah,
Right.
that's true, but a majority of philosophers aren't within the field of theology. They're working on other types of philosophy but he says if you go to that specific sect of philosophy, then you'll find majority theists. So that's also interesting to point out, I think. And so
Wait, but the majority of people who study theism are theists?
Well, yeah, well, the majority of people who deal with philosophical areas are theists, yeah. And well,
that's not remotely surprising to me.
yeah, it's not surprising, sure, but I mean, they're the ones that are actually working with the philosophy and the theology surrounding topics of religion, while the other philosophers are maybe philosophy of mind, philosophy, various other areas of philosophy.
Sure.
And so what I was going to say is I think a lot of people, you're born usually like a lot of people can go from birth to the grave without ever having a mystical experience, and perhaps they do at death. I mean, there is speculation that
I've never had one in my life, so
yeah, and there's a lot of speculation amongst professionals that it may occur during the near-death experience. And so I think because the majority of people are born into this kind of egoic framework, where they go to a school, whether it be private, public, doesn't matter, and they're instilled with these notions that lead toward a kind of materialistic perspective. It's to no surprise that becomes a normative view.
So you've heard of the God helmet experiments by Dr. Plessinger, right? Yeah. So you do know that a part of those experiments, like experimented with near-death experiences, right?
I hadn't heard of that one. I know Michael Persinger used a customized motorcycle helmet that he put
Right.
magnets. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it
And-
was an early version of what's now called transcranial magnetic stimulation,
yeah.
where you can stimulate different parts of the brain to produce all kinds of effects. You can even, prevent people from seeing something by targeting it correctly. Um, so there's a huge number of things you can do with the brain just through that one technology. And I think it was just back in the 80s or 90s that he showed all kinds of religious experiences not only are experienced and originate from the temporal lobe in the brain
Yeah.
specifically, but we also know of a certain kind of epilepsy that comes from the temporal lobe
Yeah.
that makes you believe that you are a prophet or a messiah,
Are you
or
referring to
like have
Geschwin syndrome?
incredible
And nobody on
experiences like
fire
that.
says most people who pee towards Earth. Thank you so much for the super chat. That is greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Geschwin syndrome. They talk about hyper religiosity. It can,
Mhm.
people can get carried away with their ego and have a messiah complex or
Well,
God.
I mean, that's one thing, but then having a seizure in a part of your brain that deals with belief and deals with your identity, you can't control that.
Yeah, yeah, and I was gonna say I don't know if you've heard of the Ajna light. It's like this guy, I forgot his name, but he claims it's more effective than the God helmet. And it's a little bit more recent. I thought it was a recent thing, and then I saw a video of Kurt Cobain wearing one. I'm like, wait a minute,
It
this has
could
been
be.
around for a while.
Yeah, it could be. Do you know what it uses? Because like it could use like um what do
It,
they call it? Ultrasonic
no, it's
stuff.
actually it's this like kind of well, a professional setup that he offers, and I think I don't know, maybe it's just to make money, but he oh dang, let me turn off my notifications. It's like a setup. It's supposed to be LEDs that flash behind closed eyelids, and you could either wear it as a kind of like, it looks like VR goggles, or I mean, there's another one where it's like a bedroom setup where it kind of goes. There's this huge overlay, and maybe that's just the more expensive setup to make profit or something, but I don't know. But yeah, it's basically these flashing lights behind your closed eyelids, and it's supposed to. Dennis McKenna claimed, Terrence McKenna's brother claimed that it gave him something very akin to DMT. So I've never tried it before, and I've been skeptical.
Oh, are you sort of talking about like there's you can put a TV on with white noise in front of you, yeah, and put you can cut what is it, a ping pong ball in half and then put them over your eyes, and then you'll start to hallucinate after a little while because of the sensory deprivation that your brain gets.
It could be. I'm not too sure exactly how that one works. I've never really. That's one because I thought it was relatively new, but then like I said, I saw a video of Kurt Cobain wearing one. Unless it was AI generating, I just don't know.
Yeah, and he's
But,
wearing like two like white things over his eyes, right? Or like
yeah,
headphones.
yeah, and he's explaining how it works. Like he's saying that he lays down facing up, and he turns it on, and it's supposed to induce these
Yeah,
visions. And yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it looked like a legit video.
It's basically just like drown out all of your senses to the point that like it's supposed to mimic like a sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah,
And when your brain knows it's awake but doesn't have any sensory information goes in, it has to make it like ends up making up stuff to try to explain its non-sensory input.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it does.
And that's where like some hallucinations end up coming from.
There's a comment that I see Benjamin made, and I wanted to respond to this one. I got to turn off my phone real quick.
Oh yeah.
And okay, he said, yeah, that's how scholarship works. Okay, so the what a point I wanted to make there was that, yeah, so I mentioned that you can go birth to the grave without ever having that experience, and I think people who do have those experiences, that's when they get the switch flipped, and they start considering other ideas outside, the standard models, and like perennial philosophy or idealism or the mind at large, things like that. If you consider Aldous Huxley, he was this like rigid intellectual, probably atheist, prior to his psychedelic experience. Or I could be wrong about that because he wrote the perennial philosophy prior
Well,
to writing.
it's fine to think outside the box, but I don't think that's what that is.
Well, I definitely think it's a major catalyst for it, and for a lot of people, I think it is. And so I don't know. I think that's one reason why maybe the this view that I hold to it's not as prevalent, I suppose. I guess that's all I was trying to say there.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know if the freak was gonna add anything. If he wanted to say something now.
Yeah, the freak. What's up, homie?
Unless he's AFK.
Yeah, fell asleep.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've been I honestly, like, if I had to count, like, I think in my whole life I probably only had one of these like unitive type of mystical experience. Even though I've tried, I've attempted to go back there a few times in my life. I've only been able to pull it off once, and it was when I was a lot younger. And I wonder if it's because maybe, I don't know if it was my youth, or maybe because I hadn't ravaged my brain so much with stimulants and stuff, like, because I did, when I was younger, I did abuse a lot of alcohol. And so I don't know if maybe that had anything to do with it, but I don't know. I do want to try to revisit them.
I mean, that's that's hard to do, to like attribute potentials and possibilities to stuff like that. I mean, I don't know, unless you can literally go like, well, we know that the prefrontal cortex does this, and we know that the temporal lobes and parietal lobes do this, and that the connection between them do this. And this guy had a railroad spike that passed right between his prefrontal cortex and his parietal lobes. That's the kind of thing that we can end up being like, okay, we understand what's going on in the brain now. And we understand what's going on in consciousness, partially because we understand what's going on in the brain. Like, we can predict like what Phineas Gage or anybody else is going to like end up being like after their prefrontal cortex is separated from their parietal lobe.
Yes. No, I agree with that. Because it comes up really often in these discussions. That guy, Phineas Gage, he's always brought up in this discussion about.
Yeah, I love that example. I think he's literally like the most solid example I can come up with, because he was before neurology, really.
Yeah, there's another one. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, there's another one that's also pretty common that I hear, but I can't remember which one it is. But yeah, Phineas Gage. When I was talking to Aaron Ra invited me onto his channel to talk about mystical experiences and stuff. And,
oh yeah.
And he wanted, he's like, well, just to make sure, like, I want to make sure that what you're saying, I don't want you to tell me anything that's non-accurate. So I'm going to bring a actual neuroscientist to mediate the discussion. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Oh.
And so, we got this guy, I forgot his Christopher something, I forgot his last name, but I posted it on my channel, and so we got into it, and the guy ended up Chris ended up wanting me to go on his channel and stuff, because he, despite the fact that he was a neuroscientist, he hadn't heard about those studies. And I think it's easy for even people who have that as a profession to overlook it. Like Stanislav Grof said, he's a real famous psychologist, and he said, he doesn't believe anymore that consciousness is generated by the brain. And he says many people don't realize this, including scientists. They hold that base assumption.
So if
And
you had to sum it up, what reason does he have to believe that
I don't know
it
what
doesn't
his
come from the brain?
yeah, I just heard that. I have that quote clipped on my channel, but I ultimately don't know. I'm curious. You got me curious. I'm probably going to look into it, but yeah, I don't know exactly what view he holds. But I guess what the Phineas Gage thing, in both of these models, you still have identical results, and I think it's why it's so hard to falsify either one.
What
And
do you mean, though? Like, why would you expect to get the results that we get in Phineas Gage's case if consciousness is something that exists outside of the brain? Why is he displaying his consciousness completely differently after a physical accident?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you see, in the other, they call it the reducing valve, and so there is a quote by Erwin Schrödinger, the physicist. He says, "The total number of minds in the universe is one. In fact, consciousness is a singularity phasing within all beings." He said that actually one time, and so with this, like in this view, in Huxley's view of the mind at large. Consciousness is this, he calls it the reducing valve, so it's being filtered through the brain. And so if you affect the filter, if you alter the filter, it's going to affect in the way that consciousness is expressed. So you still have the alteration in personality, you still have everything that you would in the emergent model of consciousness. And so that I think that's why
Okay, so then what differentiates the two in the first place?
okay. Well, in the emergent model, if you
Right.
hold to the model, then like I said, like going back to that factory, consciousness blinks out at death. And in the reducing
Right.
model, it's the signal's still there, even though you've destroyed the medium that it's
Okay.
expressed through.
So how could you test for that claim?
Okay. And I think the reason a lot of people say this is because in that phenomenon of mystical experience, you get to glimpse that so-called mind at large. You bypass the filter, the reducing valve, and what people report is that one single consciousness. And
Here's the thing. Like, you're saying that there's something that you maybe could or maybe couldn't test for, but that ultimately would be falsifiable if it existed.
yeah. Well, you see,
We should be able to find out if it was real, if it is real.
yeah. And I think right now our best bet is studying that phenomenon. Like, see, I think if emergentism is true, then Kurt, like the way he'll acknowledge the diminished activity in the default mode network. He'll clear all the neurocorrelates. He'll grant all of that, but he'll use them as explanations of like, well, this is why we experience the unity. This is why we experience this. He's basically saying calling it a brain glitch almost.
Why are those insufficient for explanatory power? Like, why are those insufficient as explanations?
I think they are because in the studies, these are like profoundly transformative experiences for the individual. They find them, they rate them as the most spiritually significant experiences of their life.
Increased meaning doesn't have any effect on how, like, a railroad spike passes through your brain, right?
And Cutlery Duck says, oh, what the hell? Cutlery Duck Cafe says, or I'm sorry, Cutlery Duck says, Cafe, no one you cite agrees with your conclusions. They don't agree with you. You're stealing from everywhere to make up your own shit. Stop. Great point. Thank you.
Here's where, when I talk about the perennial philosophy, they don't confirm the metaphysical claims of the perennial philosophy, sure, but that's not to say that they, this hidden meaning and so forth. Yeah, that's all there in in their research. Anyone could look that up. So yeah, I don't like. They do find them in accordance with the perennial philosophy. Meaning, I said it earlier when I said they find no distinction between what they're inducing in volunteers and what they see in the literature over, the mystics throughout the ages, what they report in all the world's various religions.
Wait, what do you mean they see no distinction?
Okay, so when
Of course they're experiencing the same things. It doesn't mean that they're seeing the mystics actually create like a portal in front of them or something, right?
Well, no. In other words, there's 6 characteristics that cluster during this phenomenon, and they're universally reported at the height of that experience, and they can be seen within the literature throughout all the world's major religions. So that the beatific vision or the revelation of the Holy Spirit in Christianity, nirvana, satori in Buddhism, samadhi, moksha in Hinduism, wu wei in Taoism, fana in Sufi mysticism, and so forth. These are, in other words, these are all various ways of describing that one phenomenon that they're studying in modern neuroscience. In other words, it's been occurring.
One phenomenon? How do you know it's one phenomenon? Because, I'm pretty sure I could divide that into maybe at least 2.
Well, what I mean by it does occur in a spectrum, and when I talk about it, I specifically mean what the professionals call a complete mystical experience or a unitive mystical experience, just meaning the full blown or like full spectrum, and they see that as occurring, throughout history since time immemorial. That it's the same phenomenon occurring in the individuals throughout different epochs of different times and different cultures and different religions.
What about 600,000 years ago when we were not even hominids yet?
Oh yeah, then man, if you're gonna reach that far back, then I would say I think you're even going further back than Terence McKenna's stoned ape.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's possible that it was still like it evolved with us, and it's occurring perhaps. But if Terence McKenna's,
But my only point is, I don't think there was anything special about our evolution.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I suppose you could say that about the phenomenon as well, in a sense. But what is special? But your own subjectivity, or your it's kind of like that line in The Incredibles, that when everyone's
when everyone's special, no one is.
Yeah.
Well, and I agree with it. Look, I mean, honestly, I don't really think anything is special necessarily. I don't think there are very many special cases, and where you can find them to be special, you could find at least one more in the universe.
And Cutlery Duck says, yes, Cafe, humans experience similarities. So what?
Yeah, that's a common objection that I hear a lot. And, I suppose I've tried saying this about it before. I think, see what happens in the height, they call it, they recognize this characteristic unity. And what they mean by that is like a non-dual state of consciousness. And I know that's an unfamiliar term to a lot of people, but basically, like, you're sitting there right now, you're probably looking down at a computer or a phone. I'm not too sure what you're on right now, but you have this impression that you're a bodily entity in an environment. This is how you experience ordinary consciousness usually, right? You have this impression. And so that dichotomy there, the subject-object relationship there, collapses in a unitive mystical experience. There's no subject or object there. They merge into one. And so, I think that's why mystics say all is one, everything is one. They're not speaking during the experience, it's usually recalling it. It's after the event happens. But during, this is why they call it ego death. There's no ego there to recognize it as such, but there's still experience. There's still something that they recollect there that
right,
they can.
Sure. They describe it as pure observation. I don't think this is just kind of the same thing. Of course, yes, we can experience things as so different that we don't even feel like ourselves anymore
Sure.
because we're on psychedelics.
To finish that thought, I'll try to be quick. Let me see. In Buddhism, they have this Diamond Sutra, and basically they say that all sentient beings, and they don't refer to, for them, sentient beings are not exclusive to one planet surrounding a nearby star. One particular star. They kind of see sentient beings like spread out through the universe. Surrounding multiple stars. Probably.
Sure, I can agree with that. Yeah, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, throughout a whole multiverse, even if you want to consider that. And so wherever sentient beings arise, they have the potential for nirvana, as they would say. But there's this potential for a collapse to witness the interconnectedness of all things. So I think that's why I think it goes beyond just the pattern of similar brains.
Well, sure. Like here's the thing. Like, I'll get right down to the exact level I think you're talking about, Faye. Where at one point I had done some LSD, and I saw a pattern in a tree, and for the longest time didn't know what it was, but knew that I saw a particular kind of pattern. Later found pictures of Mandelbrot set fractals. Found out and immediately recognized it as the exact same thing I had saw that time. So I knew, okay, whatever I saw was a real thing that I couldn't have seen without the psychedelic. But what does that mean to me? Does that mean that I'm seeing something that is more real than, the things I can test the most? No. What it means is that, of course, a psychedelic is going to activate so much of your brain at once that you're going to get connections of ideas and conceptions of things that you couldn't have, otherwise. So it's like you're not looking into like some metaphysical universe or something.
Yeah, no,
It's all physical.
I absolutely agree with that. That's why I kind of like, when people talk about a spiritual realm and stuff like that, people think of like something ethereal, like a Mortal Kombat realm or something. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't think that's what mystics are talking about when they talk about this spirituality. I think this sense of interconnectedness, of seeing all as one.
That is what I mean, though.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about.
Have you ever seen the Mandelbrot set?
I know exactly what you're talking about. The Mandelbrot set. I think. Have you ever seen the Julia set fractals? I think those resemble more what you see on psychedelics.
Totally.
What do you call it? So you've seen the fractal phenomena. So here's what happens. Like I don't know how high you went on these doses, but so you initially, if you take a somewhat light dose, you may see colors brighten. Whoop-de-doo. A lot of that's like a microdose, right? Okay, go a little higher. Now you're going to start to see fractals everywhere, covering all surfaces.
Yeah, what's interesting is all the people around me, when they went to the same dosages, they did see those kaleidoscope fractals.
Yes.
I never saw those when I did. It was only really the one time where all of a sudden I could see the entire tree itself, and it came together as like a fundamental pattern.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I'm glad I could relate to it at that level. Then let me take that and build on that right there. So I love the way Terrence put it one time. He said, when you put a magnet on iron filings, how it coalesces into this pattern, right? Like, sure. So if you take taking a mid-range dose is akin to like the magnet, still kind of far away from the filings, but kind of moving toward them, kind of wavering between that. So they're kind of like pulsating towards it, but they're not quite there yet. So you see the fractals, you see the the surfaces of any object. It could be a table. It kind of looks like it's wavering a bit, and these fractals are kind of forming. Okay, go even higher than that to what Terrence was calling the heroic dose. Now you're not going to be able to tell where your body begins and where everything else ends, those fractals are gonna like kind of contort so much that everything becomes that fractal vision. It doesn't matter whether your eyes are open or closed at that point, and you're not going to be able to do anything. You're nailed to the ground at that point. And this
Why
is
would
why
it contort though? Because every fractal also has to adhere to like time the same way that we do.
you said time.
Yeah, time.
Well, okay. See, I think that's where it gets interesting. See, once you have this like full, complete contortion, you're now in this kind of like labyrinth of like there's the only thing that exists is now this labyrinthine fractal existence, and you have no sense of time whatsoever. Time seems to have collapsed on itself. It's
What
almost
do
like
you mean time seems to have collapsed on itself? That doesn't make any sense.
like people, you can look this up in the studies. It's a universal characteristic of the unitive mystical experience. It's a transcendence of time and space that people report, that people have.
What do you? A perception of time is not the same thing as like actual time. You know that,
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah, let me be clear, because I don't want to get you know I don't want to like confuse it here, but
Okay,
no,
yeah,
you're
that's
right.
what it
And
sounds like. At least you're saying.
okay, yeah, I'm not saying that like physics itself is collapsing or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that the transcendence isn't about leaving reality. It's about a shift in perception where the boundaries of self, time, and space dissolve. Physicists, they might describe the world from the outside, but mystics are describing how it feels from that phenomenon. It's not like transcending reality itself. It's transcending the way we usually perceive reality.
Okay,
It's contorting the machinery that
so it's like
is.
therapy.
Well, I mean, people call it like
That's,
30
I
years of
mean, that's
therapy.
you know that's what therapy does, right?
Yeah,
That's
well,
just therapy.
people have called it 30 years of therapy in one night, and
Well, yeah.
Bill Richards, one of the professionals out of Johns Hopkins, he says the reason why it's so threatening to like pharmaceutical companies is because they want to mask your depression with taking a pill every single day, where the you just need one dose, and it's the memory of the experience that's actually aiding people out of depression.
Well, I can almost agree with that. Yeah, with a lot of conditions that are normally, there's a lot of psychiatric care prescribed to them, can have incredible effects with just the proper scientific psychedelic dose. And like I think that has a lot of really cool and confirming implications about neurology. Like this shows that like the best way for us to learn things is to be more open-minded and think more openly, because that's literally how psychedelics work in the brain. They turn off paths in your brain that you normally use, and they accentuate the paths in your brain that you don't normally use.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. I
like that's a really important aspect of how psychedelics work in the brain and how they show you things that you couldn't even have imagined, thinking of before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think you can imagine what you're about to encounter if you've never done it before. Like some people, maybe arrogantly think they might be able to, but no, it's going to show you a mental universe that you never even knew existed. I like the way Terrence put it once. He says, the situation we're in is like, if we're going to learn something, some wisdom out of this experience, we're expected to stand on top of hills and wait to be struck by lightning. And he's like, that's the situation we're in vis-a-vis the psychedelic experience. Because I don't know, it is kind of like that. I mean, if you saw me on my first attempt here with the heroic dose, you probably would have been laughing your ass off at me, man. I was on the ground thinking I was going to die.
Probably, right? I mean, I would with pretty much everybody, including myself.
Oh, dang. Yeah, man, I was begging for my life, man, because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was my first time. And
Jesus, you took that much on your first time?
Well, I had tried it before when I was a teenager, but like micro doses, dude, like caps and some stupid shit. It was my So yeah, it was my first time doing the heroic dose, and
Oh no.
I was like 23 at the time, and I had I was with my brother at the time, and I had even offered him half. He's like, "Nah, man, I want you to try. I want you to do the whole thing." I mean,
Okay. How was he as a trip sitter? Was he
um,
good or was he not very
it
good?
was cool, but when I started like getting like really worried, like he's like, dude, he drove me back to my house, and so I went to go spend time with my wife, and everything was cool for a little while. I was on the bed with her, and the sun was beaming in. It was dusk, and so it was beaming in from behind her, and like she was glowing like some guardian angel, man.
Ah,
And
it looked perfect. It was picture perfect in that
yeah,
moment.
and I could. She's like, well, I was giving her all these compliments and stuff, and she's like, well, do you want to have sex? And like, I could barely manage to kiss her, and that's when it really started hitting me, and I fell on the floor, and she looked at me like, what the hell's going on? And man, dude, I was like I don't know, like it felt like that movie Face Off when they have those metal boots.
No.
The Alcatraz prison, they're walking up. They have these magnetized metal boots in Face Off with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. Well, it felt like my entire skeleton was that, and I was like, man, I was begging my wife to call the ambulance, and she's like, "Fuck you think I want CPS taking away my kids?" And I said, "Well, can you call my mom?" And she's like, "No, fuck you. Your mom's just gonna call the ambulance, or And then, okay, well, can you call my brother?
So
She's
you
like,
felt real weird and you got real scared.
yeah, dude. She's like, okay, I'll call your brother. So my brother came in, and I was begging my brother to stick his fingers down my throat so I can vomit him. And he didn't want to do that. He was like, he thought that this is what they do. He's like, nah, I'm not gonna stick my hand in your mouth. They're gonna kill you. They're gonna kill you. He had no sympathy. And so, man, I laid there thinking like, oh shit, this is it. I'm gonna die. But and so yeah, man, I was there for the.
I mean, that must have sucked.
Yeah. Well, I finally, man, I was, of course, already out of it. They were there with me. Finally, when I was able to come down, I was able to sit up, man. And I mean, I was like kissing the ground, not literally, but like glad to be back, man. I thought that was it. And like, yeah, man.
No, I feel that. I feel that. I've had a pretty rough trip before, so I totally feel that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I like. That's why people, when I hear like JO say like, "Oh, I took this, and I had fun," I'm like, man, that's not a heroic dose. Like, what are you talking about fun? Like,
yeah, I feel like it's got to be pretty intense for it to
Get
be
off
the
of the
kind of
drugs.
dose that you
Come on,
really
guys.
take seriously.
All right.
But
The drugs.
All right, fair enough. I'll end it there. But yeah, yeah. So I guess I can. I'll try to
but
be
yeah,
more.
not everybody has to be a psychonaut,
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I don't know. People ask me, "What the hell do you mean?" And like, I'm like, well, if it doesn't take you to the ground, then if you could still walk around, then you probably didn't take enough.
Yeah, I can kind of get what you mean. Yeah, like I mean, I always prefer a good experience, but every once in a while, it's like, well, I did need to throw up, so.
Yeah. Apologize, Saka. I'll just end it with a quote from Terrence. Man, he said something really funny. He's like, if you took enough that you only thought you were gonna die, then you took too little. Like the whole point is to die, like ego death or whatever. And I think JL was saying, well, people come back to the baseline of consciousness. So what are you talking about? Well, ego death is ephemeral. It's not permanent. You will come back to the baseline of you will come back to your egoic consciousness, but but it feels like a death and rebirth. You will come back a changed person with a different perspective.
I mean, that is where I would say like people describe it as a really transcendent experience when their awareness reduces all the way down from themselves all the way to just a point of observation in space time. Like it's really interesting how like really non-religious people will describe it to me, because it's like they'll describe it in so much more like physical and mathematical types of concepts and terms to me that just make a lot of sense.
Are you familiar with Jason Paget?
No.
To switch it up for tacos, he was like this jock dude that sometime, I forgot what age he was, but he got mugged, and they hit him over the head with something. I don't know if it was a bat or what I forgot what it was, but he got that induced savant syndrome, or I forgot what it's called.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, and
savant
so like
syndrome.
Yeah, and like he would ever afterwards. He went from like this jock that was lifting weights and only wanted to party, drink beer and stuff, get laid, to this person.
Yeah.
He became.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, he became.
Yeah, among like another guy who, after he got hit in the head, could remember the weather on every single day for the next like 10 years or something like that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Like stuff like that, like really crazy abilities after having stuff like that happen.
And he spent his time drawing fractals too. These pretty cool mathematical fractal drawings, man. And I think he's still alive. It's Jason Paget. And man, there is something else I wanted to mention about that. Because I think that definitely can happen with I don't want to say, because I know Taco said keep it on the down low, but people can access those parts of that. I think that's why some people, they deal with trauma. They like Bill Richards would say something like, people expect to, find Jesus in the midst of their experience, but they end up dealing with some trauma and when they were younger or something like that, There's another, there's another guy. God, I wish I could remember his name, but he was talking about how he went to South America to try that special drink, and he was looking for something spiritual, and he ended up when he was growing up, his father committed suicide, and it left him the burden of taking care of his family.
It's funny the things you choose to like censor for yourself. Special drink and suicide is wild.
Yeah. Well, man, I'll try to, if I find his name, I'll leave it in the comment section or something. He said that when he did it, he woke up at the rosary of his open coffin for his dad, and and when he got up to look at him inside the vision, and he was able to completely like understand every single aspect of all his guilt and all his sin and everything, his hate, his love, his and totally accept him and forgive him for what he felt, how he felt betrayed by him throughout his life. And and it was something that helped him. He couldn't, he said he couldn't hold a relationship down because he would always get belligerent and stuff like that. And after that, he found his wife, he had a family. You know what I mean? That life just became a lot better for this guy.
No, yeah. I mean, well, like, here's the thing, too. Like, a neurocognitive view of this would be like, one of the really interesting effects that I had from my experiences was when you have enough going on in your brain at the same time that isn't normally what you experience, you're going to end up having a sort of third person experience. And so you're going to be able to view yourself and your own memories from sort of a third person perspective for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the most interesting implications, at least to me, about psychedelics, because I remember looking at myself from a view that wasn't myself and realizing, wow, I can learn a lot about myself and improve a lot about myself that way. And so it made total sense to me. It makes total sense to me why people use it a lot for self-improvement and things like that. Because I mean, it's useful for that. It's really good for that.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think it has the potential to help a lot of people out there, and
yeah. I would say still take it under the direction and recommendation of medical professionals if possible. But.
Oh yeah, there's this. I'm reading right now. It's Sacred Knowledge by Dr. Bill Rich, is one of the professionals at Johns Hopkins, and he writes about that, like his vision for the future, because like he's in that the whole game of trying to get this stuff legalized for professional use. He wants like the average schmo on the street who's dealing with depression to be able to go to a clinic in their local community, and be led by a professional to help them with whatever they're experiencing, any type of whether it be drug addiction, depression, anything like that. Like methamphetamine, man, in my town is like this scourge here, man. I don't know how it is in your. I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And man, if you go downtown, like you'll find meth pipes across the ground, and like I don't know, dude. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
I mean, out in Utah, it's usually not too bad. We have it pretty easy when it comes to drugs, but it is one of the most crazy crackdown states when it comes to substances.
You see those videos of like San Francisco, like goddamn, like where like people are just like zombied out and hung, like hanging on like a thread and like standing up like off fentanyl or whatever it is.
Yeah, sure,
yeah, that's crazy, man. And like holy crap, like it obviously it's worse at other places where apparent, unless people are offering the illusion that it's worse, but those
I mean, to a degree, yeah. It's like there, like in a lot of cities, there are just some places where you go when you're homeless because that's the most survivable place to go for a ton of reasons, and so all you got to do is like walk past a majority of streets that are totally clean, nobody's homeless on them, and then you walk past one where every homeless person in the city is on. Like that's kind of how it is within Salt Lake City in Utah too. There's a few streets where you're gonna find at least 12 homeless people at one given time, and it's it's just because like that's where the food kitchen is, or where a local place is that help them out. A lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm trying to